Hello everybody! Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. It is Friday, TGIF, right? So my name is Anna Sabramowicz. If you haven't been here before, I talk about scenario design and how to design, and I help people like you who are learning experience designers or instructional designers. I help them design the kind of learning experience, which are interactive learning episodes that engage, they can be proud of, and they do that with the help of experts without feeling overwhelmed or stressed out or anxious about working with people who, for the most part, don't understand the kind of work that we do, which has to do with learning, which has to do with taking something that's abstract in most cases and turning it into something that's very contextual and relevant to the people that we're designing learning for, right? So one of the things that I wanted to address in this specific video for you is something that comes up quite a bit, and it doesn't just come up with the calls that I have with people that I talk to on my strategy sessions and with my students. It also comes up at a whole bunch of conversations all over the place, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on LinkedIn or even Twitter, just this continuous idea that we are in some ways beholden to the ideas of just subject matter expert, and also the fact that if you don't have anything that you've designed that you're really proud of, that you might be going into those conversations without feeling like you are on equal footing with somebody who has like 10 years experience doing something and they're on that on that project as the expert. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you, because I think a lot of people, there was a couple of times I've gotten this feedback saying, oh, Anna, you get to work on the projects you want to because now people know you, or you have a list of followers, and now you can choose, right? I don't get a choice. I don't get to choose the projects that I work on, and therefore if the client basically says, do this, then I'm just going to do that because I need to. And that's a very good point. But let me tell you how I got started. So, and this has nothing to do with me getting started as a consultant. This has to do a lot with confidence and building it up, and just some of the things that have happened that you might be able to say, hey, you know what? If Anna can overcome this, then maybe I can do it too. So, when I was still in a university, and I was going to be a high school teacher, by the way, but that didn't pan out because we ran out of money. I ran out of money. But what happened is, in order to pay for university, I got some student loans, but they would only cover school. So I had to work. And one of the jobs that I got when I was in university was to be a door-to-door salesperson, and I sold vacuum cleaners. And if you ever had a terrible job during a uni or during school, I'd love to hear about it. Post it in the comments. So, I'm doing this, and I actually did it with my brother because me and my brother had to work to support ourselves through university to help out my mom too. So we're in this meeting. This is like a sales training session, and this is at this part-time job, right? And I'm sitting there, and we're talking, and I'm answering questions, right? And all of a sudden, the facilitator looks at me, and he's like, "Is everything okay, Anna?" And I'm like, "Yeah, everything's fine." He's like, "You nervous or something?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine." Well, hi Faten, thanks so much. And one of the things, and I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. And I just dropped it, right? At the end of the meeting, my brother comes up to me and he says, "Oh my God, what the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "What? What happened?" And he's like, "Look at your armpits." And I looked at them, and you guys, completely soaked. And I didn't even know it. And I don't know if any of you ever suffer from this. I realized that I suffered from hyperhidrosis, and it didn't actually show up until I was in my, I think I was 18 or 19, just hit, right? And I didn't even know what was going on. I was like, but I wasn't I was sitting there, and I was just like talking, but just soaked. I didn't even notice. And because it was one of those like blue crisp shirts, super evident. And my brother was like, why do you keep on, why did you, like, you kept on raising your hand? I'm like, I didn't know. And then I was like, oh, that's why everybody was like, what's wrong? And my facilitator actually went up and asked me in front of everybody, hey, you know, are you okay? Or are you nervous? And I was like, oh my God, I get it now. So that sounds kind of trivial, but then when you want to get into teaching, and then later, like I told you, the teaching thing didn't pan out, and I got into becoming a corporate trainer, what happened is, one of the things that happened is that you can't present in front of people when you're sweating like crazy. And the thing is it has nothing to do with being hot. It has everything to do with some sort of like a weird nerve trigger that happens, and you have zero control over it. So then basically what happened is, over the next couple of years, I would strategize and experiment with all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of things that would mask this. And then what would happen is this is what happens when you're in a situation like that and there's something that you can't control. There's obviously a stigma attached to having huge pit stains, right? And so what happens is, with the minute you get up on stage, or the minute you start talking to people, that comes up as a trigger. And then what happens is you get nervous, and when you get nervous, that triggers you getting thinking about what's happening, and then getting more nervous. And it basically what it becomes, and I gotta tell you this, it becomes like a downward spiral, right? So regardless of whether you're okay at that moment or not, what happens is, if all of a sudden you are in a situation where you think that something negative is going to happen, or somebody's going to notice that you're, in this case for me, that I'm sweating profusely, then what happens is that just continues to kind of become a loop. It becomes a spiral. And this is one of the things I wanted to actually talk about today, is this idea of a spiral. Because one of the things I hear designers out there, I hear people who are trying to find a great job, people who want to work on awesome projects, people who have teams that they want to influence. This is kind of, I'm just going to show you just this one. This is a spiral, right? And as you can see from the spiral, it can go down, right? So what happens is you just keep on, your mind keeps on looping, and it can take you all the way down. You just keep on beating yourself up, thinking you can't get out of it, and it actually, and this is exactly what happened with that hyperhidrosis that I suffered from. And I got to tell you guys, it was the worst. And it's funny because, I mean, I know there's people out there who have like worse stuff happening to them, but in that moment, it's everything, and it affects everything because you are in your own head, right? So one of the things that happened is I really started thinking about, what does it take to get out of that? What does it take to, let's say, walk into a meeting? Because I work with a lot of people who walk into meetings where they're supposed to be like the person who comes up with the learning design ideas, the person who is the trusted advisor. Let's say you're trying to design a interactive learning episode, and you come in as the instructional designer, the learning experience designer, and you're saying, hey, you know, everybody's like, we've got all these experts here. We're trying to create let's say an episode around leadership. And there's these leadership experts in the room. They've been leaders, or they just applied this really cool learning leadership framework, and they want to use it, right? And you come in, and one of the things that happens when you're designing learning, and tell me if this happens to you, is that people who have been to school, they think that they know how classes work, and they think that they know how to design learning, and they think also that they know how to design learning for adults, and they also know They also think they know how to write stories because they've heard stories, all those things, right? So that's what happens. So that is very difficult to face. And a lot of times what happens is we come in and all these people have all these ideas about how the learning should be, what e-learning is, what storytelling is like, what interactivity is like, what engagement is, and they bombard us with all their ideas, and then we give in and we're like, okay, we just say, okay, sure, yeah, okay, we'll do that. Or we don't even do that. We come in and we say, what do you guys think? This is what I'm going to do, but what do you guys think? And everybody in a meeting, well, that's why I say those meetings should be very focused. Everybody in the meeting is going to want to feel like they're contributing something valuable. So guess what they're going to do to help you? They're going to come up with a whole bunch of ideas. And for me, you really have to evaluate when you're getting feedback from other people if they're a credible resource for that kind of feedback. So a lot of times, and this will happen, here's an example. Let's say you have a friend who you trust very much, and they're very, they're really, they've been a great friend to you, and you really love them. They're a great friend. And then something happens where they get a car, and you're thinking about getting a car, and you ask them what they think about cars. Now, let's say this person is just somebody you trust, but they're not a car expert, right? Even if they give me their opinion about which car I should buy, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt, because even though I trust them and I love them and they're great people and they've come through for me, they're not a car expert. And a lot of people, like, they do this. They think, oh, I like this person, therefore they should be right about these other things as well. No, right? They're not a car expert. So when we see an expert in leadership, that does not make them an expert in learning, right? It doesn't make them an expert in e-learning. It doesn't make them an expert in storytelling. They might be, but I doubt it, because usually people are experts in single things. They're generalists in a lot of things, so they can tell you a lot of opinions and ideas, but they're probably experts in 1, 2, or 3 things, and that's it. And probably most of them, if they're coming to you, they're looking for learning advice. So one of the things, what I want you to think about is that spiral. Pretend that the only way, if you're discouraged about the fact that you're like, I'm not feeling confident, I'm not feeling like today is the day where I can just come into that room and say, you know what, you guys, I have an idea, I have a plan, and I'd like to use this strategy because after I've listened to all of your ideas and what you want to achieve, for me, this is the most logical outcome here. And one of the things you have to realize is, if you come into anything with a hammer and you go, hey, you guys, we got to use this hammer, nobody's going to take you credibly. Nobody's going to think you're giving people the right advice. But if you listen to what their goals are and you can accurately say, now I can make a decision, that comes off as a trusted advisor. Because imagine if you're coming into somebody who is in every single one of us in a learning opportunity, we are all consultants. We really are. We are all looking at a problem and then trying to figure out the best way to solve it, right? We're problem solvers. But you can't be a problem solver if you are not if you're not listening to what the customer wants. If you're coming in with a hammer saying, I want to use scenarios, or I want to use e-learning, I think it's the best fit, it might not be, right? You have to, a lot of times, it's not about the single thing that you can do. A lot of times it's listening and having several ideas. One of them might be, and should be, bringing things online. Why do I say that? Because I think a lot of people benefit from being able to consume and learn on their own before they join a group or at their own pace. Because one of the things you assume when people get together, let's say for a meeting or whatever, is that everybody is at that time really excited to learn or ready to learn. Well, what if something's happening in their life where they're not ready to learn, right? So what happens there? So one of the things that online learning allows us to do is to really bring those experiences to the learner when they're ready. And that's beautiful. I think that's fantastic. So one of the things that you have to think about is, how do we take a experience that you're experiencing something right now, like you're not confident walking into those meetings saying, hey, you know what? We should follow this idea. I've listened to you. This is great. I know I can help you here. Let's do this. But what will happen a lot of times is you'll fail, right? You'll be like, oh, I'm going to try this and it's not going to work. Let me try it though. And one of the things that happens is when you try something and you're not successful the first time, a lot of people just beat themselves up and they somehow start doing that downward spiral of, see, I told you you weren't good enough. Well, I want you to think about that the only way to go from here now is up. So what you're going to do is, yes, you're going to try. Yes, you're going to say things that aren't going to work. You're going to build things that aren't going to work. But then you have to take the time to, from that failure, to learn, right? What are we going to do differently next time? Because a lot of people keep on repeating the same thing over and over and they're saying, see, it's not working. Well, try something else. Talk to people who can help you, who can give you a better perspective. Do that. So, this is your cycle, right? Try. That's everybody's cycle. You just got to start telling yourself better stories. So try. You fail. You're going to learn. You're going to try again. You're going to suck a little less. You're going to probably be sucky for a little while. That's okay. You're getting better. Most people, they try, they fail, and they just stop. They don't even learn. They don't even go to the next step. They just give up. And they just start telling themselves stories about themselves or other people, how everybody's against them. Don't worry about that stuff. You just learn. Try again. There's things in here, though, in that cycle that will really help you, that helped me. And those are things like surrounding yourself with people that will support you, surrounding yourself with people that will challenge you. Because a lot of us have, and I have those people around me, who will support you, but they don't know how. Or they'll just, whatever you come up with, they'll be like, oh, that's wonderful. It's kind of like, you know, the mom love, right? A lot of people have that mom love from somebody where they're like, oh, you're brilliant. Whatever you do, you're brilliant. And you're like, no, that's not what I want. I want to get better. I want to get better. So how do you do that? You surround yourself with people who challenge you. You surround yourself with people who are above you. You surround yourself with people who are where you want to go. A lot of times people stay where they are because it's safer, right? They don't have to live up to any, you know, if you walk into a room and you don't feel like you're like, oh man, in this room, everybody else is a rock star. I'm like, kind of like, ew, you know, I shouldn't even be here because I'm not even at the same level as all these people. You know what? That's a great room to be in, because you're going to start wanting to be at the next level because you're in the room full of people who are where you want to go. That's amazing. If you walk into a room and you're the best person there, get the hell out of there, because that means you don't belong there. It means you're gonna, if anything, you're gonna probably start going down. You got to be going up. So find places that challenge you. Find places that push you. Find people that do that for you. It's not nice and easy, but that's the only way to get better. So, and the other thing, like I talked about, is you have to start telling yourself different stories, because to fail and not learn from it is where most people are. And then they just end up creating a whole narrative about why and who and what happens, and set themselves up never to try it again. Don't be that person. So, if that's, and coaches, people who will follow through with you. I've been lucky as I've had a couple of people who even just briefly were able to look at my work, give me tough love feedback. Guess what? In the moment I was like, this is hard, because you think you're better. But that's what makes you better, is that sustained feedback and coaching and a bit of that tough love, which we don't usually get, which is hard to get. And the other thing is that when you find a professional coach and invest in yourself that way, one of the things that also happens is that this person now is able to give you the kind of feedback that is focused on your specific domain. Because a lot of times, even if you get feedback, and a lot of us work with other people who are very professional, they're experts at what they do, but they don't necessarily understand or can give you really the kind of tweaky feedback that you need to create something that improves your work. A lot of times, it's not just the end product that needs to be improved, because you get feedback from your end users, you get feedback from your peers saying, here, this wasn't as engaging as I thought it was going to be. I didn't, there's some feedback that's very blatant, like somebody starts something and never finishes it. Okay, those are great things. However, sometimes it's in your system, and you could say, this took me so long to produce. Maybe what you really need is somebody to come in and say, this step here, it's completely unnecessary. Why don't you just tweak it this way, and now you can eliminate it, but it also improves your final product. So sometimes it's not just the final product, because if the final product comes at the cost of 3 months of you just banging your head against the wall, or just feeling like you have to just pull so many teeth, then that's not worth it. You have to find a way to get somebody who is an expert at what you want to get good at and give you feedback on that. That's awesome. So there was a couple of questions that I got, and I wanted to address them in this live as well. One of the questions came from, and I hope I'm saying this name right, this was from Betna. And Betna said, how do you improve learning in, what was the question specifically? Here it is. Oh yeah, how to engage and inspire learning in online communities. And that's a great question, and I don't want to talk about something where I'm not an expert in online communities. I have never been a community manager. I've only participated in them as a participant, as an adult learner. And to be honest with you, I think if I have any advice in that area, I would say study ones that are doing something well. One of the best ones, and is actually used for case studies all over the world, is the Articulate Heroes community. Also, there's another one that's really fabulous. It's actually ran by Peter Shia. It's the Instructional Designers and Educations community. And I think there's several reasons why those places are engaging, why they work, and why people continue to participate. One is that people have to see real value in participating, whether they're learning something, or they're getting rewarded for helping others participate. There's a sense of recognition. There's a sense of sharing. But the thing is, and I think that you have to realize that this happens in most online communities, is that there has to be a gardener. Like, you can't just create a space and for people to just be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna start being engaged. You actually have to create topics, challenges like they do, professional development opportunities. So let's say for Articulate Heroes community, it really is about, what is it? It is the fact that you have a peer group of people who understand your language, they're speaking the same language. Another one is the fact that you get social recognition for participating in the group and the challenges, so you get exposure there as well. And then the other thing is you get a benefit from being a contributor, right? They recognize people who are contributing and who are top members. And it's funny because in Facebook, that actually happens. It's actually part of the feature of Facebook groups, where you actually see things like people get little notifications attached to their name, like conversation starters or frequent contributor, right? So that also happens there. Now, the other thing you have to do is, and you now, especially on a smaller scale, a place like Articulate now is kind of the hub. So people go there, and people go to those discussion forums to discuss, and they've created that community there on their site. And that's super awesome, however, super hard to do these days. So I would almost say that the other thing is to be able to find out where those people already are, and where they're already congregating and having those natural conversations. And actually Facebook's one of them. And then engage with them there, because that also helps. I think a lot of times we try and create communities in other boards, in other places, especially in courses. You try and create discussion flows, and it's repetitive, and there isn't really much value to people. So find out where they're already hanging out, find out what they would actually enjoy being, discussed, and reward them for participation, because you'll find your champions and they'll continue contributing. But then the other thing is realize that to create that community takes time and effort and continued effort and commitment. And so that's why the communities that I mentioned are, I think, thriving, because those people continue to be those gardeners. Now the other question that I had was about learning outcomes, right? Should we use learning outcomes? And there's all these discussions around, should learning outcomes be shared at the beginning of learning? Is that, is there benefit or distraction to that? And this is so I was like, okay, why is this such a, like, are we focusing on the wrong thing? And I actually, to be honest with you, I think we are. We're focusing on the wrong thing. Have you ever had an adult learner, when you've designed your interactive learning experience, come back to you and say, this would have been cool, but the learning outcomes were missing? So, you know, it wasn't as cool. When you think about it that way, you realize that a lot of the things that we're focusing on are remnants of a delivery style that is archaic and is not conducive to actual learning. So the studies that are being referenced for learning outcomes, as far as learning outcomes being important to learning, they're studies that were conducted on college students and high school students. And they're not adult learners, and that's different because adult learners have different needs, professional aspirations, and they're not doing it because they have to. And also, those studies were conducted for people to memorize text, paragraphs. And I can see why you would believe, you know, that learning outcomes are essential when you're sharing with people information that is out of context, because you have to prove to them that one day they'll use it. You have to prove to them that somehow it's valuable. If I throw you into a situation where you have to make a decision, and the decision is contextual to you because I've studied you, I don't have to prove anything to you. The situation itself is going to tell you, hey, oh my gosh, what do I do? This is important because I can see myself in this. I can see myself making this decision in the future. If I have to sell you on that decision first, that means that I haven't contextualized it enough to make it relevant for you. That's why I need a learning outcome. And when you look at some of the best examples out there of scenario-based learning and the kinds of learning that's designed for adults, to engage adults, the learning outcomes is a single line, which is set to a challenge. Like if you think about one of the best scenario-based learning pieces out there, most people have seen it and hopefully actually experienced it. I think a lot of people talk about it, but they haven't actually experienced it as a learner. It's called Haji Kamal. Haji Kamal is about a soldier who's sent to Afghanistan to negotiate basically with a community leader for an alliance, right? And it really is about building cultural competence. And the learning outcome is like a single line. It says, you are new, you're nervous, advise this guy, make the best decision because you want the best. Your challenge is to advise him because he's going to mess up and not gain the confidence of the leader. And that's it. It's not. It doesn't say things like, you will define cultural competence. You will identify opportunities for cultural competence to be applied. No, it's you will be put into a situation where you have to make a decision how to help this person who doesn't know anything about this particular thing and see if you can help them. That's it. Guess what? Awesome. And people didn't even have to be told to go through it. They wanted to because it was that compelling and interesting to them. So that's what you should be focusing on, not whether to include learning outcomes. We should be focusing on not having discussions about what the research says. It's there, okay. What we should be focusing on is creating an experience that is so contextual and so provocative and interesting to the people we're delivering it to, they won't even notice that the navigation overview isn't there. That's what we should be focusing on. Is it relevant? Does it help them do their job better? Is a bullet list in the very beginning going to make or break that experience? If it does, that's not a good experience in my opinion, and I'm sticking to that. So these are the things that, as far as I'm concerned, that I want to focus on. And when I talk to people in my strategy sessions, a lot of times we basically uncover the fact that we get so bogged down and distracted by the things that aren't necessarily important that we stop creating things that make us proud, because we're constantly overthinking of whether we're using the right system or the right protocols, or we're, but a lot of it comes down to, a lot of people, when they talk to me, they'll say things like, well, I haven't really created anything engaging, or I haven't really launched anything that I'm super proud of. So when I'm pitching these ideas, because of things that I've seen, I'm not confident in saying we should go this way because I have nothing to back me up, because there's no, you don't have a research study. And one of the things, my goal is to help you create an experience that you can use as basically your all of this stuff that I've come up with is not my own. It's me pulling from standing on the shoulders of giants, as they say. It's me pulling from the places that have been iterating, have been using data, and then pulling that in to create something that even I myself would enjoy going through, right? Those are the best experiences, where at the end you're like, oh, that was fun. I could actually go through that again, even if I wasn't a learner here, because you find it so interesting and engaging, right? That's what you want. So what I suggest is, if this is something that you want to get awesome at, you want to get more confident about designing and pitching and doing the kind of projects that you love, regardless of your, what's happening inside and what's happening on the outside, to build that confidence and actually have a system in place that you can pull off the shelf, basically. A framework that you can then pitch and say, I've listened to everything that's happening here, and I'm confident this will be a great way to engage our audiences and achieve your outcomes. Let's do this. That's what I want to help you do. Now, give yourself the opportunity to discover that you can do this. So I'll put a link underneath the video. It's a link to my calendar. You book a session with me and we talk about your goals. We talk about what you want to do, where you want to go, and then we figure out if I can help you get there, and we go from there. So that conversation is free. It's actually with me. I get on the phone with you, and then we just talk about what exactly we can do to take you to the next level. Because if you're watching this video, that means you're already interested in getting to the next level. You just need a little bit of that clarity and focus to figure out exactly what to laser focus on, so you can get you there. All right. So I hope you have a fabulous weekend, my friend. I hope this was helpful. And next time, I'll talk to you soon.